All right. We are live here, Moneyline MMA, coming to you guys for UFC Denver. Of course, that's coming this Saturday, July 13th. Prelims starting at 6 p.m. Central Time. We're going to get a normal card start here. Main card starting at 9 p.m. Central Time. So keep an eye out for those fights. But the prelims will be starting at a normal time for us. Of course, the fight is headlined. Fight card is headlined by Rose Namajunas fighting Tracy Cortez, a last minute, well, pretty close to last minute replacement. Tracy Cortez is specifically, and I think one of the themes that might come up a lot in this show today is just the fact that because this fight is taking course in Denver, we're gonna see a lot of and the fact that we have a lot of replacements, right? Kind of last minute, later on replacements. I think we're going to see a lot of conditioning handicaps. I think it's going to have a lot to do with our fighters prepared for this, because it's just not easy to go and fight in high altitude. Of course, it's only 3 rounds for most of these fighters, but it's a lot. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not in shape, if you haven't had enough of a fight camp to get yourself ready, you're going to gas out very early. Before we get too far into our show this afternoon, let's at least give a quick recap. It's been a couple of weeks. We had last Saturday off, but now we're coming back into action. This is the first fight card since we saw Alex Pereira defeat Jiří Procházka in their second fight of their careers. Alex Pereira kind of comes in last minute to defend his lightweight belt again and finishes Jiří after wobbling him at the end of the round. He absolutely knocked his head to oblivion at the beginning of the next round, and the rest is history. Jiří says he needs to evolve or retire. Very interesting. We'll see what Jiří ends up doing. But in any case, Jose and I both had our 5 weights on Alex Pereira. If you were riding with us on that one, especially with the value you were getting, let's just remind everybody, Alex Pereira was at minus 184 at the time of our show last week. Oh my goodness, the amount of money you would have won if you took our suggestion and went Alex Pereira by KO. It would have went and it would have hit, and it did hit. So quickly recapping the rest of the card, unfortunately, Brian Ortega suffering some sort of injury from a weight issue or something like that, even though he didn't have to cut that much because they upped it to lightweight. Brian Ortega still had issues, was having to drop out. So they put Dan Ige in out of nowhere. It was pretty wild. Props to Dan Ige for coming in out of that. Like, that's literally the latest replacement the UFC's ever had. It's never happened. Like, day of. They literally were weighing the guy on TV as a weigh-in. It was pretty wild. And then as far as disagreements go, that's the last thing we'll cover from the last card. And we had a couple disagreements in which both of Jose and I came out successful. One of the disagreements, Jose did take Joe Pyfer to win, and Joe Pyfer came out and dominated. Simple as that. Joe Pyfer did exactly what he needed to do to reestablish his prospect status. And the other one was that Jose had Anthony Smith and I had Roman Dolidze, and Dolidze was able to get the job done in that. So Jose and I did have a 1-for-1 sort of situation there. But also I think Jose had Ian Gary, and I did take MVP. So technically Jose is also there in that case 2-1 on the head-to-head disagreements for specifically UFC 303. I thought my MVP was going to be able to do a little bit more damage with his uniqueness, but and honestly, he was. He really was. Ian Gary had to resort to wrestling and getting on the dude's back and doing nothing, trying for a choke that never happened instead of standing with dude and fighting him. So to me personally, just saying, -1 respect for Ian Gary. That's just me. You don't have to, but I'm saying -1 respect. He wants to act like the big bad dog, and he can't even stand with MVP. So if Ian Gary really thinks he's going to be a champion in that division, it's hilarious as a joke. Not that Ian Gary, at least. I guarantee you that much. So we'll see. But at this point, I'm ready to fade Ian Gary when he starts getting up to the really high end of that division. I don't think he has a chance against a guy like Robert Whittaker. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. But in any case, we shall move on to discussing our exciting card here. This week, UFC Denver, as I mentioned, up at altitude elevation. Quick recap for anybody that is new here. Jose and I give our picks. We pick 5 fights. There are currently 11 scheduled for UFC Denver this Saturday. Jose and I pick 5 of them and weigh them in order of confidence. 5 weight is the most confident pick of Saturday afternoon. One weight is the least confident pick of Saturday afternoon. So that's not to say that the one weight is the least of all the fights. It's the least confident of the five that we're choosing to pick. And obviously, therefore, your one weight is still has some confidence to it because you're choosing to pick it over the other fighters. Five weight's the most confident. Jose and I picked these individually from each other and only confer on them right before we start and hit the record button, just so that we know what order we're going to go in. Because Jose and I always give our best bets first. We don't dilly dally. We don't mess around and give you our half-ass opinions off the gate. We're going full on forward with full confidence. So for this Saturday, my full confidence pick, my five weight, shall I say, for Saturday afternoon is going to be in the main event. It's a rarity. But at this point, you already know who I'm picking. Of course, I'm going with Doug Rose. In the main event, she's the one that's been training for this. She's been ready to go for a 5-round bout since the contract was signed to fight Macy Barber. And unfortunately, Macy Barber had to withdraw. And it didn't look like Rose might even have an opponent. And Tracy Cortez steps up and says, you know what? I will do it. I will be the one to fight. I'm supposed to fight Miranda Maverick in a couple of weeks, but you know what? I'll jump up a week on my schedule so I can get a better name on my resume. And all props to Tracy Cortez, but man, I just don't think with her style it's going to be able to get the job done. Simply put, Rose Namajunas is going to be by far the superior striker in this match. I understand if you go and look at Tracy Cortez, strikes landed and strikes absorbed, statistics specifically, you're going to be like, oh, what do you mean? Tracy Cortez lands a great amount of strikes and absorbs less than Rose. But okay, really though? Which one of these two ladies is the championship pedigree fighter who's been in 6 champions fights? Of course she's going to have worse statistics when you're fighting Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jacek, Zhang Wei Li, the current champ. I mean, it just keeps going on. Obviously, Carla Esparza, that was really boring, and nobody wants to relive that. But Tracy Cortez's best win is, what, Jasmine Jasudavicius? I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad. But Jasmine would get cleaned, I should say, by just about every fighter Rose has fought and lost to. Just about everyone, if not all of them. So I'm not hearing the BS that Rose is washed up. She's 32. She's 32. That's not old. That's not washed up. What do you mean? I think she's going to be able to dictate the pace here. Each round starts standing up. I think she's going to have the better conditioning. She's ready to go 5 rounds. Tracy was only training to go 3. I get it. Tracy's still in good shape, but 3 and 5 rounds is a big difference in your game plan, specifically when you're a wrestling-based fighter. Tracy Cortez needs to get on Rose and pretty much sit on her back for the whole round to win. Or obviously get a submission or something like that. I don't buy it. I don't think Rose is going to get submitted. I really hope we don't see another kind of like slow fight just because of the fact like Rose fought Carla and knew that Carla's advantage was wrestling and submissions. So she purposefully played a game to avoid getting taken down. And that's not that that's not smart. I just don't wish for something that boring to occur again, especially in a main event. But in this fight, man, I really don't see many ways at all. If these ladies fought even 100 times, I see 90 out of 100 times Rose coming out of here victorious, whether by KO or by decision. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, Nick, I totally agree with you. Up and like everything to the point to I have Rose Namajunas as my 5 weight as well. And that being said, yeah, she's the championship fighter here in this matchup, and Tracy Cortez is a late minute replacement, and just the level of competition who they fought, just you can't even compare their resumes. Rose Namajunas, her resume is tougher. She's fought, Weili Zhang twice, beat her twice. She's beat Joanna Jacek twice when she was in her prime. So, and then other than that, she's just coming off a 5-round unanimous decision over Amanda Ribas earlier this year in March. And Tracy Cortez, she does only have 1 loss on her record, being 11-1. But the level of competition, the best win she has is Erin Blanchfield. Thus far, I see, which was back in Invicta. So this was before the UFC even. And Rose Namajunas, she's only 2 years older than Tracy Cortez. Rose Namajunas is still young too. She's only 32 years old. So she still has a lot in her, and just the level of experience, the amount of fights she has. She has 5 more fights than Tracy Cortez, but she just has 5 more fights, and those five fights are just the hard championship level fights that she's had, the 5 rounders and the knockouts that she's had. And in Tracy Cortez, she's not really a finisher. Out of her 11 wins, 9 of them come to decision. So she's really gonna have to be dominant because she's not really much of a finisher. So she's gonna have to be truly dominant, and she's gonna have to outstrike Rose and completely dominate her in almost every aspect of the game to beat her by decision. That's the way I view it. And I agree with you. If they fight 100 times, over 90% of the time, I give it to Rose Namajunas because obviously there's always that fighter's chance. So Tracy can always catch Rose Namajunas in something, whether she does clip her and TKOs her or gets a submission on her. But Rose, she if she's losing, she's lost. Well, her 2 most recent losses were decisions and split decisions, and then she hasn't been KO'd since that slam by Jessica Andrade. But that's Jessica Andrade. She's just a wild, like strong beast in her own kind. So then that was like a rare knockout too, and it was a slam. Not even like I don't think Tracy Cortez is going to be slamming Rose the way Jessica Andrade did. So that being said, yeah, if I just don't see it going any other way other than Rose winning by most likely unanimous decision again, but again, she has that knockout power, so she can give Tracy Cortez her first either KO/TKO loss or her second loss by submission. I truly think Rose Namajunas is just that good in every aspect of the game as well. So TKO, submission, or decision, either way goes to Rose. I feel that strong about her, so I agree with you and her being my 5 weight.
Sounds good, man. So we're both pretty confident that's the obvious money line MMA lock of the week, taking Rose. And it doesn't seem like we both have an agreement on. I mean, we both agree Rose is going to win, but we can't. What I'm trying to say is, when it comes to picking a win method or getting anything specific, like we could both tell you last week it's going to be Pereira by KO. Sure, it could be by points. Yeah, okay, points is always like a valid thing if Jerry doesn't get knocked out, but no, of course he's not going to submit. Come on, get out of here. Neither of these dudes are submitting either one. Let's move on from that. But in this case, you really never know. I mean, if Tracy Cortez is able to land a takedown, you almost never know. Like, scrambles can occur. Rose can get to her neck. She can get to Rose's neck. I mean, I just feel like scrambles can occur. You never know with that kind of stuff. So I would avoid, at least as of now. It's only Monday, right? We have to see the lines too. I'm saying all this without knowing what the lines will be on those props. But hey, if you're looking at it and you get Rose at a really great value, say by decision or by KO or decision, maybe take it. But otherwise, you might just have to eat the 245. It's currently minus 245 because she'll win the fight. But to be able to say that she'll get a submission or get a KO, I can't. I mean, it's a long 25 minutes is a long time. So I do kind of lean towards finish, but I don't want to say that at all in a Rose fight because we've seen the opposite of finish in the Rose fight. So you almost never know, right? And the last comment I'll make is that, at least according to Tapology, Rose is fighting out of, she's currently actually fighting out of a gym in Colorado. So it's kind of like her home fight. Like, she's literally just like driving down the road to get to the fight venue on Saturday afternoon. So if that's true, and she has been like actually living in Colorado already anyways, and just being like a person in Colorado, I just feel like even more so to the conditioning and stuff, it benefits her so much. Whether or not Tracy's in the best shape of her life, I just feel like Rose naturally will just be able to take the less oxygen better. So sounds like we both agree though. Rose will win this fight. Main event. Love that for the main event. So yeah, that being said, let's move on. That's both of our 5 weights Saturday afternoon. Jose, what do you have for your 4 weight?
So for my 4 weight, this is the featherweight bout between Christian Rodriguez and Julian Erosa. Right now, Christian Rodriguez is the betting favorite at minus 225, while Julian Erosa is the betting underdog at plus 172. For this one, it's always hard for me to go against Wisconsin hometown guys, so that's what I'm going with. I'm going with C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez. He fights out of Rufus Sport, and he's been looking nothing but spectacular. He lost his UFC debut to Jonathan Pierce, but since then He's won 4 in a row. One of them over Raul Rosas Jr. and being Raul Rosas Jr.'s only loss in the UFC. And I like him a lot in this matchup. He's definitely the less experienced fighter compared to Julian Erosa. Julian Erosa is 29 and 11, but he's also 34 years old. He is coming off a first round guillotine submission win, but before that, he had two first round losses via TKO again in the first round. So he definitely does not have a chin on him. 11 of his losses, 7 of them do come via KO/TKO. So I like these odds for Christian Rodriguez. I think it puts him live for a KO or TKO. I think he is capable of landing and putting out Julian Erosa. Again, out of his 11 wins for Christian Rodriguez, he does only have 3 KO/TKOs, but he has 4 submissions and 4 decisions. He's a very well-rounded fighter. I think he can add. I think he can make the KO/TKO 4. So I think he's truly is a well-rounded fighter. The only thing is Julian Erosa is the bigger guy. He is 6'1". Christian Rodriguez is 5'7", and Julian Erosa also has a 3-inch reach advantage over Christian Rodriguez. And to me, that's always like something that I always look out for, because usually those guys with the longer reaches, I'm expecting them to obviously land more on the feet because they can cover distance quicker. And Julian Erosa, with his striking, yeah, he lands 6.14 significant strikes per minute, which is high, but he also absorbs 6.29. So him taking in 6.29, absorbing 6.29 significant strikes per minute, and him already showing that 7 out of his 11 losses come via KO/TKO. That's why I think he's put live for a KO/TKO. So, this is something similar like with Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje throws a high volume of punches, but he also takes a lot back. And against Max Holloway, that's what happened. Max Holloway's a high volume puncher, and he just landed so much eventually that led to that KO literally last second of that fight. And Christian Rodriguez, he's not as high as Julian Erosa, but he still lands 3.45 significant strikes per minute, and he only absorbs 2.28. So that ratio is definitely better. He's absorbing less than his output, while Julian Erosa is the opposite. So that's why I also think he can be live for a KO/TKO on Julian Erosa. And when it comes to the takedowns, I think this is almost up to anyone's game. I think both are definitely going to be fighting to get some true dominance and control time. I think there's going to be some back and forth with this. I do think Christian Rodriguez can take down Julian Erosa, but obviously I also think Julian Erosa can take down Christian Rodriguez. But on the floor, I'm not too worried about it. Julian Erosa, he's never been submitted before, but again, Christian Rodriguez is that good that he can also give Julian Erosa possibly his first loss via submission in this one. So I like Christian Rodriguez a lot in it. That's why I have him as my 4-weight. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on this fight, Nick?
Yeah, so I agree with you on C-Rod, and even trying to take the hometown bias out of it, I really just think C-Rod's the better all-around fighter here. C-Rod's been able to earn himself KOs, finishes in the UFC, as well as decision wins, and I've been pretty impressed. You commented on the fact that he's the only person to have beaten Raul Rosas. Granted, he was, I believe, above weight in that fight. He's been having weight problems, so he is he is needing to make sure he can get that weight cut in place. But at the same time, you got to think about winning money here. When you bet on a guy and he gets on the scale and then isn't the correct weight, you don't lose your bet unless the fight's off. So if you bet on a guy that's overweight before he's actually overweight, you've gotten yourself in a good spot, because traditionally overweight fighters win that fight. It's just usually how it works. So keep that in mind too. But Erosa just keeps his hands like really low, and it shows in his stats. I mean, he's gotten KO'd 7 times in his career, and kind of recently too. I mean, even just as recently as last year, Fernando Padilla put this dude's lights out in the first round. The year before, Alex Caceres put this dude's lights out in the first round. I think Erosa, like, he's definitely got size, because that's one of the things you notice if you look at him against C-Rod. You might notice it closer when they're doing face-offs and stuff, Friday and Saturday and whatnot. But Erosa's 6'1", C-Rod's 5'7". That's a pretty big height difference, but I'm not even that concerned, man. Erosa's gotten KO'd over and over again by guys smaller, way smaller than him. So it's not one of those things where I'm like, oh, okay, he's small, he can't get the KO. I don't know, man. Yeah, most of the guys in this division are like 5'9", 5'10". I'm not concerned for C-Rod. I think he finds his space, his spots, excuse me, and he gets there. He either finishes Erosa via KO or gets the decision win. I'd be pretty confident, in my opinion, to pick either one of those. I think there is a chance of wrestling for sure, but I just don't really think the submission is a very high chance whatsoever. So I would say personally, C-Rod by decision or KO. So, and I'm not sure. I can't remember if we went over the odds, but C-Rod is minus 225 favorite there. So, taking his points or KO is a good spot to help maybe get that to like 180. Get a little more value.
Yeah. I said the odds at the beginning. Yeah, I agree. For me, I'm taking it. I agree with you. I think C-Rod, if he loses, I think it's most likely just going to be via unanimous decision going to Julian Erosa, and it's probably, and I would just assume it'd just be like a vet move of just outscoring Christian Rodriguez and exposing his weaknesses. So, but again, we can only know what his weaknesses are when Julian Erosa exposes them. And that being said, yeah, I agree. I think Christian Rodriguez most likely. He's my four weight, and I definitely think I'm going with KO as TKO just because Julian Rosa, how much he absorbs per minute, and just his history of already being TKO'd/KO'd. 7 out of 11 of the losses, 7 of them coming via KO as TKO is just ridiculously high. So if I was Christian Rodriguez, I'd definitely be looking for that power punch at any given moment. So yeah, this one I agree with you. Yep, Christian Rodriguez.
Sounds good, man. So then in that case, we shall move forward. Just as a quick recap to anyone who has not gotten here right away at the beginning, we covered both of our 5 weights and Jose's 4 weight, which is also by proxy my 3 weight. Both of our 5 weights line up to being Rose Namajunas. We both agree on the main event winner, and on top of that, both agree on the 5 weight most confident pick of UFC Denver this Saturday. So make sure to put some money on Rose Namajunas. And the fight we just covered, C-Rod versus Juicy J, Julian Erosa. We both got C-Rod Jose's 4 weight, my 3 weight. And we're going to move on to my 4 weight of Saturday afternoon. And that's going to take us to a prelim. I believe that's the feature, should I say the main event prelim, the final prelim to be played before we get into the main event, if I'm not mistaken. But odds subject to change, positions of fights that we state subject to change. But in this case, I'm looking at Joshua Van fighting Charles Johnson. Of course, the Joshua Van that was supposed to fight Tagir Ulanbekov, that was supposed to fight Tatsuro Taira, that was supposed to fight Suma Duerji, that was supposed to fight Lucas Rocha. This guy has had 4 fights, count them up, 4, canceled in June, and multiple of them were high, I would say pretty high rank opponents for a guy that has barely a tenure in the UFC. Joshua Van, we've only seen him minimally. He's 3-0 in the UFC, and he's looking to fight some other guys that are ranked at this point, or debatably on the cusp of being ranked. And he's coming up against Charles Johnson, who's much more of a seasoned veteran. He's 4-4 in the UFC, 8 total fights, coming off 2 wins against Azat Maxim and Jake Hadley, both by decision, with 3 previous losses. Before that, all by decision. Charles Johnson's fights very frequently go to decision. In fact, Charles Johnson has never been finished. If he loses the fight, it's by decision. So it's one of those spots where I'm interested to see what Josh Van can do. He's hyped up as this huge, crazy prospect, one of the next big things of the flyweight division. And it kind of reflects. I mean, his odds are pretty heavy in his favor. Checking right now on FanDuel. It looks like Joshua Van is minus 200. Charles Johnson's plus 154. And honestly, I was expecting that to be heavier. Not that I don't respect Charles Johnson. He deserves respect coming off a couple of wins. Both those wins being this year, recent wins. I just don't think they're that impressive. I think Josh Van is going to come in here. He's already beat Kevin Borjas. He's already beat Felipe Boons. Don't get me wrong. Those aren't insane names. But I was ready to see what he could do against Tagir before he had to cancel simply a couple of weeks ago, which is another thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, right? I like the fighters who have been very clearly ready to go. He's been in camp for however long now trying to get a fight, and he's like, give me a fight. Come on, somebody fight me. Please, somebody fight me. I'm ready to go. Finally gets the fight he's looking for, And I think Josh Van comes in here blazing. And even if he doesn't get the early finish, I think he's got the cardio to push through, where Charles Johnson might die out and gas out a little bit. So Josh Van, KO or points, that's a guarantee. That is an absolute guarantee, Joshua Van. KO or points. Don't even bother taking this man with a submission as a chance. Just do KO or points, because Charles Johnson, like I said, won't get finished. It's unlikely, at least, and that's why you cover yourself by taking the KO, because Van does have power. He's got 6 professional knockouts, but in the UFC at least, his only knockout was through ground and pound. He didn't like clean knock someone out on the feet. So I'm not sure that's going to be Charles Johnson. That's a real tough dude we're talking about. So give me Joshua Van, but let me see this thing go the distance, most likely. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, so for this one, this is a fight I did not talk about, but I do like your analysis on Josh Van. I agree with Josh Van. I think he should get this win, and I agree with it most likely being via decision, because Charles Johnson has never been finished in his career, whether it's submission. I wouldn't see this being a submission for Joshua Van. So as a win, that being so, if he's gonna win, yeah, it's either gonna be it's going to be decision, and it's just going to outclass him and with this superior striking. And I just did not talk about this because I have not seen enough of Josh Van, but I am excited. I am excited to see him and get a better idea of him on Saturday. But that being said, yeah, I do feel strong about Josh Van getting this. He's just significantly young too. He's only 22 years old, which is crazy. So I like Joshua Van in this one.
Okay, yeah, cool. So you don't have an official weight on it, but you do lean Joshua Van with that pick there. I'm pretty confident here. Joshua Van is my 4 weight, and like I said, KO or points is the way to go. That's a near guarantee for you to hit this Saturday. Parlay that with Rose and just sit back and eat some nice snacks, have a burger, and enjoy the fights while you know you're going to win some money on the back end. And maybe sprinkle some other things in there just for fun. But hey, we're here to win money as well. So that is all the way down to well, that's both of our 5 and 4 weights. A little bit down to my 3 weight as well, but let's go to Jose's 3 weight. Excuse me.
Yeah, so for my 3 weight, this is going to be the welterweight bout between Santiago Ponzinibbio and Muslim Salikov. Right now, Santiago Ponzinibbio, he is the betting favorite at minus 215, while Muslim Salikov is the betting underdog at plus 164. So this one, I'm going to go with the younger guy, it being the 37-year-old Santiago Ponzinibbio. Reason is just that the level of competition he's had compared to Muslim, I think is just superior. Is just tougher in general. I think he has a better resume than Muslim Salikov. And Muslim Salikov, he's 40 years old already, 19-5, and he's coming off 2 losses. As a matter of fact, he's only won 1 out of his last 4 fights, and he's been finished in half of those. He was TKO'd by Zhiliang Li, and that's granted being 2022. And then just earlier this year by Randy Brown, he got KO'd in the first round. So he's bouncing back from a first round KO, while Santiago Ponzinibbio is bouncing back from a more recent KO, but that happened in the 3rd round against Kevin Holland. So both guys are definitely at the tail end of their careers. I don't think Santiago Ponzinibbio, even though I'm taking him to win this, I don't see him really climbing up and doing much for the welterweight division. He's looked good, but it's already almost like a thing of the past. He's just not as active. I think a lot of his good years were just kind of passed and gone behind him, and he's not as active, I felt like, as he should have been. But this is a fight where he definitely should win. His strike, when it comes to the striking, how they match up. Well, first he has a 3-inch reach advantage over Muslim, and he's also taller than Muslim. He's 6 inches. He's 6 foot tall, while Muslim is 5'11", and again, Santiago being the taller and having a 3-inch reach advantage. With that, he also throws a higher volume of punches. He lands 4.9 significant strikes per minute, and Muslim lands 3.36. So this is going to be a fun one on the feet for sure, and I definitely give it to Santiago. I think he's going to be landing more of these shots just because of his reach advantage and higher volume. But that being said, he also, this is the thing again, he also does get hit a lot. He absorbs 4.67. So he's still landing more than what he's absorbing, but it's basically thin, like basically about matching. And that being said, that definitely puts him live to get knocked out as well, which is worrisome for me. So that's why he's in the middle of my ranking. That's why he's my 3 weight. And when it comes to the grappling department, I think Muslim's probably going to be the one to initiate the takedowns and try to go for that control time. So if Muslim wins, he's probably going to knock out Santiago or just win by control time and just completely out wrestle Santiago. But I think in the end, Santiago is going to land more strikes on the feet and just win by decision. I don't know if he's going to knock out Muslim, even though Muslim was most recently KO'd. Out of his 5 losses, he's only been KO'd twice, but he has been finished 4 times. So I think Santiago he did TKO Alex Morono, but that was a while ago. That was already 2 years ago. So I think Santiago he may finish Muslim, but it's been a minute, so that he's just really fought and looked truly dominant to finish anyone. So I think if anything, it's going to be a decision win. If anything, even a split decision for Santiago Ponzinibbio. It really so. Yeah, it's just 2 vets going at it, and really nothing to offer this welterweight division. So that being said, yeah, I'm going with Santiago Ponzinibbio, him being my 3-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Man, largely the same, man. Like you said, this has so little implications on the division, and they're so old. But it's the co-main event. It's just it seems silly, man. I really don't understand. I kind of hope that changes, but I don't know. At least as of what I'm seeing right now, that's for some reason the co-main event, and for whatever reason, that's what we're gonna have to be stuck watching right before Rose steps in the cage Saturday night. But I do agree on Santiago. I only have a 1-weight on him, so I'm a little less confident than you. Mainly just because I feel like it's gonna be kind of a boring, like maybe I'm not giving him enough respect, but I think it's gonna be kind of more of a boring fight. It's obviously gonna be on the feet. I think Santiago has more of a pedigree. What you said, it's like the first thing you said is like he has more of a championship experience, and that's 100% true. I mean, Santiago has wins as far back as 2015 against Sean Strickland, and he has beaten Mike Perry. He has beaten Neil Magny. He has beaten Alex Morono more recently. I mean, those are some good names. Those are some really good names to beat. And Muslim Salikov has had a good career, but we're talking like, what, Francisco Trinaldo, maybe his best win? Like, come on, this isn't even, it's hilarious. It's a joke. That's a joke. Trinaldo gets cleaned up by like 10 of the people that Santiago have already beaten. So, and the fact that he's got 3 years, um, obviously, I'm not like extremely sold because he is my 1-weight. Santiago's a minus 215. He's a favorite for a reason here. And I think he is a safe bet to make on this card. Just be a little careful with the parlay because in a fight like this, it's a striker's chance, and Muslim could just land the right strike to put out Santiago. There's like a 10% or 15% chance of that happening, but it could, and it will ruin your parlay, and you'll be mad. So you heard it here. I would advise keeping Santiago off the parlay, but I do have him as my 1-weight.
Yeah, Nick, I agree with you that too, because out of Santiago's 7 losses, he's been knocked out 4 times. So that is worrisome. He definitely doesn't have a chin on him either. But out of his last 3 fights, obviously being finished by Kevin Holland, but besides that, he's lost 2 to split decisions. So he's shown, and both to Michelle Pera and Jeff Neal. So and both guys are known to be finishers. So Santiago, so if he's able to just play a smart game and not get clipped too hard, easily his for the taking, I think. So, yeah, I agree with you on Santiago Ponzinibbio. I just feel a little more confident in him, but not too confident because, again, he's in the middle. He's my 3-weight, and he's obviously your 1-weight.
Yes, sir. So yeah, that being said, we have covered a few fights now. We only have a couple left to go over for this Saturday. That including my 2-weight Saturday afternoon. We've already covered my 5 being Rose, my 4 being Josh Van, my 3 being C-Rod. And we're going to go down to my 2-weight. We're looking at Gene Silva. This is a guy who fought just a couple of weeks ago. He's coming back, short notice. And this is one of those short notice situations where I'm not quite as concerned as I might have been because he just fought, right? He is clearly in shape. And unless he just like lost himself like Paddy Pimblett a couple of days after getting the win, he's going to be perfectly ready to go. The one thing that I might be a little concerned about is that this is up a weight class too. So that does mean in one hand it's a good thing because he doesn't have to go cut all the way down again, which is hard on your body. But Drew Dober, this is Drew Dober's weight class now. This is not Gene Silva's weight class. This is Drew Dober's weight class. And anybody who's watched the UFC, as long as any of us have enough to be watching a show on YouTube about it, I think we all know who Drew Dober is and what he brings to the cage. He's an entertaining dude, and he either seems to land a KO or get KO'd. I understand his last fight against Moicano did go to decision, and he lost it. It was a kind of a more of a wrestling match. Not many strikes were landed in that fight. Kind of not as usual for Drew Dober there, but previous to that fight, he had a streak of 5 fights where all 5 of them ended in KO, whether he won or lost. Just a note, he won 4 of them. So to me, Drew Dober is one of those guys you got to be careful going against, and that's why Gene Silva's only my 2 weight. Drew Dober has always got the ability to clip you with that crazy overhand of his, or really anything he wants to throw. He'll bait you into thinking like, oh, I'm beating this dude up. He's done for. And then all of a sudden, just wham! And you wake up, 10 minutes later, like, what just happened? So Gene Silva does need to be careful because Drew Dober will throw some crazy heat, maybe the biggest heat Gene Silva's ever seen. I mean, looking at Gene Silva's history, Charles Jourdain was already his biggest. Charles Jourdain was already his biggest, toughest opponent, and going back to the weight cut thing, Gene Silva was overweight. Like he had a very tangible advantage going into that fight. Very tangible. He was 2.5 pounds over the weight limit. Technically 1.5, actually. Technically 1.5. But he stopped the weight cut is the main point and started hydrating way before Jourdain. So this will be a real test of Gene Silva and what he can do. If you believe that Gene Silva is all that and a bag of peanuts, he does what he's going to be able to do what he did to Weston Wilson and Charles Jourdain until he gets to the higher levels of the ranks in this in the UFC. But man, Drew Dober is not the kind of guy that's easy to put out. He has been put out, but it's not easy, man. It is not. So Gene Silva, this biggest opportunity of his career to show what he's got. And in all reality, he's never been finished himself. So at least until now, I have no inclination to think Drew Dober's the one to finish him. Although it's funny to say, Drew Dober's also the kind of guy that would finish him. Like you would think Drew Dober would actually make perfect sense if we were doing our recap next Monday, saying, yeah, we should have not doubted Drew Dober. So, what do you think about that, Jose?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that exact point. To like Drew Dober could finish Gene Silva. That's actually why I'm going with Gene Silva on this one, but he is my 1 weight because just the experience Drew Dober has over Gene Silva in the UFC. Drew Dober's already an experienced vet, and he's been there with some tough guys. He's fought Islam back in 2021, so just only 3 years ago, and he fought Beneil Dariush in 2019 and Matt Favela. So he's lost to these dudes, but he does have wins over Nasrat, Alexander Hernandez, Terrence McKinney, Bobby Green. So he's raced. He's got some good competition on his resume. So I do think, and he's just he can be a wild card. He can go swinging for the fences, and he can get the KO or he can get KO'd. And the thing is, what makes him scary is I think the odds of him getting the KO are higher because he does have a big chin, and 27 out of his 14 out of his 27 wins come via KO/TKO, and out of his losses, he's only been knocked out twice. So I don't know if Gene Silva is going to be like even though Gene Silva has 10 KOs/TKOs on his record, and 10 out of his 13 wins, 10 of those are finishes, is crazy good. Drew Dober, I just don't know if Drew Dober is going to be someone that he could finish. I think Drew Dober is going to be a guy that he's going to beat up, but probably for 3 rounds and go to decision. I think Gene Silva is truly going to be tested in this fight. I think Drew Dober is definitely a better fighter than Charles Jourdain. So I think Gene Silva is going to be truly tested this fight and be pushed out to the 3rd round and win decision, just because I think Drew Dober is just hard to put out, and Gene Silva's never been put out either too. So but now him being in the UFC, now he's gonna be going more against these UFC caliber fighters who like that do have KOs at the UFC level. So just too early to tell where Gene Silva falls in this. You know, everyone at some point, their at some point is going to get tested, whether it's earlier in their career or later on, like Volkanovski. That being said, yeah, I got Gene Silva, but I'm just not as confident just because how truly dangerous Drew Dober can be. But besides that, when it comes to the striking department, I think Gene Silva he is a good striker. He lands a lot more than what he absorbs. While Drew Dober, again, he can knock people out, but this is why he can also get knocked out. He lands 4.34 significant strikes per minute, but he absorbs 4.23. So Gene Silva being a high IQ striker, I do think he's going to land a lot on Drew Dober and ultimately push to that decision victory. So I got Gene Silva, but again, Drew Dober is pretty dangerous, so that's why Gene Silva is my one weight.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. All right, well, we got one more fight to cover this afternoon. We've covered all my 5 weights. I think you just got one left.
And this last fight, this is the middleweight bout between Abdul Razak Al Hassan and Cody Brundage. For this one, I'm going with Abdul Razak Al Hassan, mostly just because Cody Brundage, he's not. I don't want to say like I'm just betting this because I'm going for Abdul because how not good Cody Brundage is, but he really hasn't shown nothing too impressive thus far in the UFC. Even like he just lost, he got rear naked by Bo Nickel, and he looked good for like 1 second in that Bo Nickel fight, and then the rest Bo Nickel completely just dominated him. And I think in this one, I think Abdul, out of all his wins are KO/TKO. Cody Brundage, out of his 6 losses, he's been KO/TKO twice. So for this one, I'm honestly thinking Abdul can honestly just add another KO/TKO to his record because Cody Brundage again, he's not shown much. He's got a DQ win and he has a KO by like slam and punches. And other than that, I mean, he lost to Cedricus Dumas by decision. And no disrespect to Dumas, but like he's just coming off a first round loss himself, and and then he lost Josh Frem as well. So in just last year, not really like he's lost, he's losing, and not really the best fights. But besides Bo Nickel was definitely like he's definitely still a prospect. But that being said, he beat Trishan Gord. Yeah, nothing too impressive on Cody Brundage's record quite yet. I think Abdul just himself is scary. But he did just get finished by Joe Pyfer in October as well. So he's been knocked out for the first time in his career pretty recently. But even then, I don't think Cody Brundage will take it. Out of his 10 wins, half of them come via KO/TKO, and 3 of them by submission and 1 by decision. If Cody Brundage wins this, it's going to be a decision. But again, I think Abdul is going to just completely clip him and knock him out. Abdul is old. He is up there. He's 38 years old, but he has not got a win. He hasn't fought actually in a while. His last win was in January 2023. So I don't see him being in the UFC long after this, but I definitely think Abdul with a KO/TKO on this one over Cody Brundage. Do you have any thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Well, obviously it's not a weight, but I do. I lean with what you're saying, and you kind of mentioned like you don't necessarily want to pick against Cody Brundage. I will. I think Cody Brundage has been completely underwhelming as of late, and I've seen nothing really to be impressed about. He's a guy that I've not wanted to hate on. I've wanted to have faith in his ability to be a good prospect. I feel like he's been around for a while now. I mean, he's had 9 UFC fights and he's only 30 years old. So like every time I see him on another fight card, I'm like, will we see a little bit more of an evolved version of Cody Brundage? And I feel like we just aren't. Consistently, we aren't seeing an evolved version of Cody Brundage. And until we do, I really can't ride with the guy. I do think Abdul Razak Al Hassan, his age, being a little older, will play an interesting factor here because he's also kind of been on a skid. I mean, the fighters that Al Hassan has been able to beat is extremely underwhelming, and he has not been able to win any of the fights he has been really been placed against. And shoot, what is he? So that's what 2-5 in the last 7. Just not good. for either of these dudes. So it's why I kind of left it off my card, because I really can't get behind either one of these guys right now. But in the end, I would agree with you that I'd fade Cody Brundage harder than I would fade Al Hassan. I mean, losing to Cedric Dumas in a decision, again, no disrespect to Dumas, but very one-dimensional fighter. And Cody Brundage is not supposed to be one-dimensional. But he can't. He only lands 2 takedowns, lands 3 strikes, and Cedric Dumas is the one with 11 minutes control. I just don't get it. I'm not even gonna go on a tirade about it. Cody Brundage is just not good, and I predict he's not in the UFC for very much longer.
Yeah, and just to close off on that too, I don't think I said the odds, but Abdul is a betting favorite at -156, and Cody Brundage a +122 underdog. So that being said, yeah, I definitely don't see any value in Cody Brundage being an underdog whatsoever. So yeah, this one, Abdul is my 2-weight, and you don't have a weight on it, but yeah, you didn't talk about this, but yeah, you think Cody Brundage is just not going to get the win for sure?
Yeah, it's just a fade for him, no doubt. But all right, well, sounds good. Then that'll do it then for us here this Monday afternoon, Moneyline MMA. Quick recap: my and Jose, 5 weights completely matched up. Unintentionally, we both take Rose Namajunas as our 5-weight picks for Saturday afternoon. My 4-weight, Josh Van. Jose's 4-weight, Christian Rodriguez. My 3-weight, Christian Rodriguez. Jose's 3-weight, Santiago Ponzinibbio. My 2-weight, Gene Silva. Jose's 2-weight, Abdul Razak Al Hassan. My 1-weight, Santiago Ponzinibbio. And Jose's 1-weight, Gene Silva. We have not disagreed on any fights for this fight card. We had a few agreements and then a couple of fights in which neither of us had really a weight on, at least. We pretty much just agreed or disagreed one way or the other. But moving forward next week, make sure to tune in next Monday at around the same time, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, as we will be coming in to cover the next fight card, which will be a UFC Apex card. So be ready for somewhat of an underwhelming couple of fight nights coming up in a row, because next week, as I stated, it'll be in the UFC Apex, meaning there will be no fans, and in all likelihood they put headliners that we have no interest in seeing headline fights. So I'm not going to say anything more about what we have coming next Saturday, other than we might as well not have any fights coming. But here, Jose and I will be at 5:30 next Monday afternoon to discuss them regardless. Of course, then at the end of the month, we finally get to see Leon Edwards defend his belt against Bilal Muhammad, getting his long-awaited shot for UFC Gold. That being said, without further ado, Jose and I are going to log out for this afternoon. Thanks for listening, and let us know down below who you'll be picking.